Good morning, everybody. Sorry we're starting late. I'd like to call to order the Delaware County Board of Elections Board meeting for September 26, 2023. Can we all please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, the minutes were circulated, I believe, over the weekend. Has everybody had a chance to review them? And is there a motion to approve them, or do we need to make any changes?
Move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. The minutes are approved. All right, I want to say Mr. Director. I always do that. Mr. Solicitor and Mr. Director. Mr. Director, would you please review the agenda with us?
Thank you and good morning, Madam Chair, Member McBlain and Member Alberts. We have the consideration of the agenda followed by public comment if there is any. And then I will present the report on election preparations, the election database, sample ballots, and printing, mail ballots, printing and the schedule, the opening of the Voter Service Center, the preparation and move forward with the implementation of electronic poll books in approximately 1/3 of our precincts. Poll worker training and pay, there is a vote that I would like you to take on that. And then logic and accuracy testings. The solicitor report, there was a litigation result last week that you probably all have read about, but I would like you to review that if you could, please. And lastly, we have some polling place changes before setting the next meeting date and adjourning.
Great, thank you. Just if you could, just for public comment, just quickly outline what the vote will be on the pay.
I was going to get that, but essentially for the poll workers who are attending a slightly additional training session in the precincts for that will have rather electronic poll books, it's a $25 additional on the training. So that's to reflect their time and commitment to that.
Great, thank you. Is there any public comment? Please come forward, introduce yourself, say where you live, and you have 3 minutes, please.
Okay, my name is Stephanie Darhanessian. I live in Bethel Township. I'm here today to talk about the drop boxes. We had a drop box in Bethel Township. It was removed somewhat trivially by our Board of Supervisors. They said there was too much wear and tear in the parking lot to keep the drop box, which doesn't make a lot of sense since you'd think that wear and tear would happen because too many people were using it. So we got rid of the drop box because too many people were using it. Now, I totally understand that in Delaware County, there are a lot of drop boxes and that you guys are working on trying to figure out the best way to redistribute this so it makes sense. But there are a lot of people in our community that are still interested in having access to it. In November 2022, over 500 people used our drop box, and that was out of about 1,200 vote by mail that were requested. So it's like 45%. Now, I mean, it's not exact because you can't tell if we definitely use or if other people from other communities use that drop box. But still, that seems like a pretty significant usage. And I know we do have some nearby. So if they could either remain there or we could get one in our general area, that would be really useful for our community. That's it.
Great.
Thanks.
I think since you're the only one here for public comment, maybe we could help Mr. Allen just talk a little bit about that. You may not know offhand the surrounding ones and other information that might be helpful. And we certainly have that because our goal is to make everybody have a Dropbox accessible to them, even if it's not directly in their community. But is there anything, Mr. Allen, we could say right now?
Well, I appreciate your desire to have a Dropbox. Just as background, we do have an administrative task. It's pretty steep in that Philadelphia, which is many times our size, has I want to say 16 drop boxes. We had 39 at the last election. There are also technology considerations with cameras. So even with the couple that have been removed, Aston Township also voted to remove theirs. Bethel Township voted to remove that one. We did install a new one in Upper Chichester. However, there were camera issues. There's another one in Lower Chichester. So our goal is to right size this arrangement of drop boxes so that they're accessible. So that if there's not one in your community, there's one in a nearby community, and or also trying to take into consideration SEPTA coverage to make sure that they're as accessible as possible. So I don't anticipate we'll be going back into Bethel Township, but we will have alternatives out there for you.
And how will those be made known? Maybe you obviously are following a little closely, but how will we be letting people know where there are drop boxes?
We provide a list with each vote by mail ballot. Most of them, with the exception of Chadds Ford and Ridley Township, I want to say, are open 24/7. So there's another alternative there, Chadds Ford, although that's open only during business hours when the township building is open. So the list is provided with the vote by mail ballot and the instructions. So
Sure. I mean, just another quick note on that too, is our supervisors decided to remove it, but then didn't feel, because it's not their, it's the election bureau's Dropbox, didn't feel that they needed to notify the public that it was gone. So I happened to be at that polling place in May, when the first election, when it was gone, and multiple people were there. I'm very frustrated that the Dropbox was no longer there. So like, however we could communicate this better to our community would be really helpful.
And there is a communication plan for those that are slated for, we're redistributing, or I guess not redistributing, we are going to be removing some others. And I know Mr. Allen has worked carefully to offer to meet with every community to discuss those changes. So, but that's a fair point, and I'm sorry that people were inconvenienced. We don't want anybody inconvenienced. We want everybody to be able to vote. So, but that list comes out, and if you, I assume if it's something that you're engaged in and wanted awareness of, maybe you could email the Bureau and get that list itself. So,
Great.
okay,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All right. Then, Mr. Allen, if you would, with your Director of Elections report, please.
Well, first off, I'd like to point out that Pam Lairdsen's here. Training has begun for our poll workers already. We have mailed out the Election Day Guide, which has been updated and revised to reflect the latest and most important items that have changed since the primary election to the general election. So special thanks to Ryan Herlinger and the public relations staff, because they contribute to making sure that not only are the edits made, but also that the whole presentation of the Election Day Guide is graphically most accessible for every person who reads it. So the training sessions have begun. We're bringing along a couple of newer full-time staff who are attending these training sessions so that they will ideally be able to participate in the training either later in this cycle or at the very latest in the spring primary. We've have a number of materials that have already arrived at the Union Power Plant for Election Day packages. These are the pre-printed items that are standard for every election. So if you go to the cameras that are live streaming 24/7 at the Union Power Plant, you will see quite an array of boxes, as well as additional black rolling shelving systems that are used for election night ballot bag transfer, so that we're going to try to make that go even smoother than we have in the past. So there's a lot of activity going on at the Union Power Plant. Also, that we took delivery of the electronic poll books, which I'll discuss in a moment. Those are also at the Union Power Plant, with the exception of the ones that we're using here in media for the training for the poll workers. Next, we had some court-ordered adjustments to the candidates on the ballot in the middle of last week. We also had some minor proofreading catches and cleanup, making sure that the party was listed for one candidate, And all of that was done by the Bureau staff led by Lorraine Hagan and Rob Wright, who leads the effort to develop the election database on the HART InterCivic system. With that, we locked down the election database on the HART system late last week, and that sets into motion a series of events, starting with ordering of test decks of mail ballots. These are pre-marked ballots that we use to test to make sure that the database, the scanning software, whether it's the high-speed scanners at the wharf or the scanners that are used in the precincts, are reading the ballots and counting the votes as we should expect them to. Those test decks for Election Day ballots are expected to arrive today. We're also ordering Election Day ballots that can be used for logic and accuracy testing. Logic and accuracy testing is where we begin to program the equipment with the election database, but also run it through the paces as if it were Election Day with a series of test ballots, both ones printed off the touch writer, which is the accessible device for disabled voters, as well as pre-printed ballots that are marked right there in logic and accuracy. That is scheduled to begin as early as tomorrow. And so Jackie is here. Jackie Dunn leads up the team that oversees LNA testing and preparation of all of the voting equipment for our 428 precincts. If the logic and accuracy and the test deck ballots all run smoothly, then we continue with the logic and accuracy at the warehouse until all balloting equipment for Election Day and at the Union Power Plant is prepared. If the test decks also check out for the mail-in ballots later this week, we will place our initial order for mail-in ballots. Those who have already been, those voters who have already applied and have been approved would be in that first batch of about, last I checked, 36,000 plus voters. We would place that order with the vendor, and then if all goes as planned, those ballots would hit the mail on or about October 12. Hopefully sooner, but I like to under-promise and over-deliver. So does our staff. The Voter Service Center will open in tandem with the first mailing of the ballots, and we will announce that through social media, our website, and through a news release. Lastly, Council at a meeting late last month, or earlier this month rather, approved the acquisition of the electronic poll books through the vendor No Ink. Electronic poll books essentially accelerate the check-in process, make it easier and make it more consistent for the poll workers. It's the difference between having a paper phone book to try to look up a voter, but it only has the voters in that precinct, and having a smart tablet device that has all 400,000 voters in it, so that we can redirect voters who are in the wrong place to the right place, so that we can get someone who's in a location with 4 precincts to the right part of the room very easily. It streamlines the check-in of the voters. You just type in 3 letters of the last name, 3 letters of the first name, and it populates the options for the voters in that precinct and that county. You also have the ability, if we have an error in our records, to look up voters by date of birth or address. So it's a wonderful device, and it offers consistent guidance to the poll workers on all of the rules for every voter situation. So if it's an ID situation, it lists all the valid IDs. If it's a provisional situation, it lists what the voter can do to avoid voting a provisional ballot, or whether that voter indeed needs to vote a provisional ballot. So it's a very intuitive system. We're very pleased that the council saw fit. We're looking to roll it out in a third of the precincts this fall, and then another third of the precincts next spring, and then finally 100% of the precincts next fall, the year from now. So we're excited about this technology. There has been one item I would like to address that has come up. On a website that is known to traffic and conspiracies, there was a question about No Ink having election night reporting software, which is not a product we're buying, and that the election administrators have the ability to correct a mistake in uploading of results. And it's been wrongly interpreted that the poll books somehow can affect election results. I want to make clear for the public that the poll books, whether they're paper or these electronic versions, are clearly and separately operated and have no impact on the paper ballots that the voters fill out and feed into the Hart intercivic system, the balloting system. There's no way under the sun that no ink, the electronic poll books of any variety have the ability to change or affect the outcome of the election results or the vote tabulations or the individual marks on paper ballots. The systems are not connected in any way, shape, or form, never have been and never will. And that's all I have for today.
And do we want to move on the action item related to poll worker training and pay?
This is to approve the additional stipend of $25 for those poll workers who complete in-person electronic poll book training.
Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make that motion.
I'll second.
Discussion? I think it's fairly intuitive and I think it's important. So are we all, if we're all ready to vote, then all those in favor say aye. Aye. None opposed. That motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Allen. Mr. Parks, the solicitor report, please.
Good morning. As Mr. Allen mentioned, we did have a litigation result in a case this past week. This is the Keohane case. The board will remember there were certain individuals in the primary who tried to cast by mail ballots, but those ballots were facially defective due to date issues or signature issues. And those voters did not take advantage of the opportunity to come in and vote replacement ballots at the voter service center. Instead, they voted provisional ballots at their polling place. The board was presented with the question of whether to count those ballots. The board will no doubt recall that I explained that there is a Commonwealth Court decision that addressed in passing, I would say, this exact circumstance. The principal thrust of the decision was on a different legal issue. And then in literally, I think, one or two sentences, the court said, oh, and by the way, you can't count ballots under those circumstances. Based on that and making clear that I think at least for a majority of the board, they didn't love that outcome. The board voted to follow that decision and not count those ballots, but with, I think, an expressed desire that that didn't seem like a fair outcome. Counsel, on behalf of 3 voters in that circumstance, initiated an action in the Delaware County Court of Common Pleas challenging the non-counting of those ballots. There was a motion effectively for judgment on the pleadings in that case. And last week, the court issued a ruling granting that motion for judgment on the pleadings, doing what I believe this board thought was the fair thing and noting that the Commonwealth Court decision didn't offer any rationale and that a careful analysis of the question indicated that the balance of protecting the franchise outweighed any confusing language or superficial interpretation from the Commonwealth Court. So the court ordered that those 3 ballots be counted. And based on that decision, I think the law in Delaware County going forward, unless we have a higher court issue a different ruling, will be that voters who cast ballots in those circumstances, who cast provisional ballots in those circumstances that are otherwise effective provisional ballots, those ballots should be counted. And that would be my guidance to the board going forward, again, unless we receive some sort of contrary legal ruling from a higher court.
Well, you're not wrong. I certainly am pleased with the result for our county. What you're saying indirectly is, I guess there's a county split right now in the Commonwealth that will have to be potentially addressed if ever to be resolved in some.
There is theoretically a county split because the ruling from the Delaware County Court of Common Pleas is simply persuasive authority outside of Delaware County. But it may very well be that other courts are persuaded by the ruling, which was thoughtful and detailed. And so there may not be a split, but in theory, other courts of common pleas could reach other decisions.
I guess more importantly, unfortunately, counties can do different things, but certainly I think that what we are now able to do under the clear and legal guidance of this persuasive opinion, and certainly it's binding on us,
Yes,
we are able to count those ballots.
that's correct.
Any questions for this list?
No, only if you could circulate that rolling to the board members.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought Mr. Allen had done so, but I will make sure that that goes around.
I did, but I don't know if it was special or not. Did you get it?
I don't.
Okay, no. All right. Let's have that circulate. I thought it was a good opinion and certainly indicates our non-opposition.
I certainly have never been more pleased to lose a court case.
It's very unfamiliar for Mr. McBlain and me, so. Any questions for the solicitor?
None.
All right, thank you very much. All right, Ms. Dunn, the polling place changes, please.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay,
In terms of organizing, can I ask you a question, Ms. Dunn? So I read the reports and there's some bipartisan agreements flat out. And there are others that the changes have to happen.
mhm.
I don't know if there was any in between those two things, but it didn't look like there was any oppositions to any of them. Is that correct? Or if there is, let's put that one to the end.
Okay, well, let's start with the bipartisan, please.
Thank you.
Okay, so Haverford 5-3, currently located at Haverford College in the facility training room, room number 114A at 370 Lancaster Avenue. I was contacted by the JOE that she asked if it would be possible to move into a larger space on campus. So I reached out to the professor and chair of political science, Mr. Oberfield. He was kind enough and able to offer larger space to be used for this upcoming election. The space is still on campus. It's the building that is across from where it's at now. We did a survey. It is larger and it does meet ADA requirements. The party leaders are okay with it. And again, it's not moving the location, it's just moving to the building next to it.
Silly question about that.
Okay.
Because I believe Haverford is partly in Montgomery and partly in Delaware County. Unless I'm mixing it up with Bryn Mawr or one of them. Is this in Delaware County where the
Yes,
all right, because like I said, I could be wrong, but I don't think the whole campus is in Delaware County.
Certainly Cheney University is split between Chester County and Delaware County. I'm not sure if Haverford College.
Entirely.
Next to it growing up, and we were definitely Delaware.
Villanova, I think is.
Villanova, maybe.
That is also part of Villanova is also over the line in Montgomery.
Maybe I'm getting it wrong, but I think that Haverford College is part in Montgomery County.
You're good. Some of these things aren't wrong, maybe with
Okay.
the, like as they go down into art, the lower part.
The entranceway off of,
Right.
Oh,
Lancaster.
I know where you mean.
Avenue.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how close this is located to Lancaster Avenue, but sort of the front part
mhm,
near Lancaster Avenue, my recollection is that part is in Montgomery County. And then as you get to the back, more down towards
College Avenue.
College Avenue or County Line Road there, that's there. So I just, like I said, it's a silly question, but I mean, everybody kind of assumes that,
right,
It's just something we could just double check. mean,
yes, I
that's a
can look
fair
into
point.
that.
We could certainly make it conditional on our verification that it's located within the that township, much less the county. So that's,
Mhm.
we're more than happy to do that.
And I'm guessing, I could be wrong, that Hereford College, if it wasn't, would find another building amenable to this change, because I think they do want
Yes, they do.
to
wanna
have it on site. Thank you.
Next is Norwood 1 and 2. Currently located at Innaborough High School at 16th and Amesland Road. The current location is undergoing some construction and they will not be able to host this election. The party leaders have suggested Norwood Fire Company as a location. So I was able to reach out to the fire company and they are willing to host Norwood 1 and 2 for this upcoming election. I had a survey done. It meets ADA requirements. Signs for proposal of change have been posted. So I'd like to make a recommendation moving Norwood 1 and 2 from the current location to Norwood Fire Company located at 336 Chester Pike. Again, the proposal signs have been posted and party leaders are in agreement with this.
Okay, thank you.
Upper Darby 27, currently located at Primo's Fire Company at 1005 Cane Ave. This past primary election, I recommended the board to move Upper Darby 27 from Primo's to Primo's Fire Company temporarily because where it was being hosted was no longer available. And so I wanted to move it back to the historical location, which was the Cane Library. And at that time, they were unable to host due to lack of staff, but they are able to host this election and they are willing to do so. So I contacted the party leaders. They are in agreement. We went out and did a survey. Everything meets ADA requirements and signs of proposal of change have been posted. So again, we have bipartisan.
So are those the 3 bipartisan agreements?
That's correct.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the polling place changes of Haverford 5-3 contingent on the new location being in Delaware County, Norwood 1 and Norwood 2, and Upper Darby 27.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those were in favor, that motion passes. Okay, Ms. Dunn, what's next?
I am working on a few townships, Chester Township 2. I do have a location. I'm just waiting for the party leaders to get back to me so that I'm, again, still working on that as soon as I get the agreement from the party leaders. Prospect Park 4 and 5.
We have to move that, right? Because the current one's not available.
The Chester Township, yes, the fire company is undergoing construction, so they won't be able to host either.
Would it make sense to move contingent on no objections from the party leaders or some other way so that she can get going on that?
We did do a survey, and so again, I just did not post. the
It's all
sign.
set except for you're waiting to hear from the party leaders?
Mhm, that's correct.
But we have not posted the signs in time to meet the legal obligation for this meeting.
Okay. Then that answers that. Okay, thank you.
Same with the Prospect Park 4 and 5. That's at the Innaborough High School as well. Again, they're under construction, so they're not able to host. I did get in contact with Prospect Park Elementary School. They are willing to host and able to host, and the party leaders are in agreement. I just had not had the significant time to post the signs.
But we have sufficient time, I guess, if we approve it at the next meeting to implement it and give everybody notice of it.
We posted signs yesterday, so it's just,
Get the notices out to
Correct.
voters. Will that be cutting it close or should we?
I would suggest that if we have these 3 ready to go, we not wait until October 24, which would have been our normal next regular meeting, and have a very brief special meeting where there's no director's report, no other report, just to handle those polling place changes so that voter registration, Crystal and her team have the ability to get out a mailing to those voters, just as we will with these other ones that are being approved today, to advise them of the polling place changes.
I'm supportive of that. I think that makes sense. And October 24th is probably cutting it a little close for you. Okay, so we'll when you are ready, you'll tell Mr. Allen that the legal notice requirements have been met and that a meeting can be scheduled. Okay, special meeting. Thank you. Is that Upper Darby 1-5 and 3-5?
Upper Darby 1-5 and 3-5. My intention was to move Upper Darby 1-5 and 3-5 into the Orthodox Church, I believe,
St. John's
Saint-
Indian
I'm
Orthodox
sorry.
Church. Yeah.
where Aronimick the precincts that went to Aronimink were in. Party leaders were concerned about the parking, in that church, so they had asked me to check into St. Matthew's or St. Andrews. St. Andrews is not interested in hosting, so I'm still working on that. It was suggested of Gavrifer School, and again, I want to talk to the party leaders because I know St. John's Orthodox Church can meet the requirements because we had 4 polling locations in that site.
Okay.
I think the concern with the elementary school is that there's already 2 precincts in there. And it's already something of a tight channel to walk through a narrow hallway to get to them. And not a tiny parking lot, but certainly a parking lot that would be under stress with 4 polling places.
Mhm. Okay, so hopefully that will be in a position to be voted on at the special meeting. And are there others that you anticipate that aren't on this list that could be presented at that special meeting, if you know?
No, I don't believe so. No.
Do we need to move to append those? They're listed as action items, but
I don't believe that it would be appropriate to move at this point without the proper legal notice.
no, sorry, to hold them in abeyance or to pen them to the next. to the
Yeah,
special
I
meeting. Okay.
think that would, I mean, I think you could do that, or if you so chose, but I don't know that that's necessary
Okay,
from a
that's
rules
not
of order
necessary then.
standpoint.
We have the report, so. Okay, thank you, Ms. Dunn.
Thank you.
I see, Mr. Allen, there are no campaign finance waiver requests.
That is correct.
And so right now we have listed, the next meeting is October 24th. I assume that even if with a special meeting, we're going to want to have that meeting before the election. Make sure-
Yes, I would recommend that we try to arrange at the earliest possible date the meeting just to consider changes, and that we continue with the regularly scheduled meeting on October 24. Keep in mind, with 428 precincts, there are always possibilities of a couple of more precincts, polling places, proprietors advising us that for whatever reason, due to some emergency or that we have to relocate. That's been my experience in 16 years at least.
Yes. Mine and less than that. And Mr. Parks and Mr. Allen, if there are any motions at that meeting that we should make to delegate responsibility for those, let's make sure that they're on the agenda, please.
Yes, that is our practice, and that should be an action item to delegate the decision-making authority, as has been the practice.
Thank you. Anything else from the board members? Anything else from Mr. Allen or Mr. Parks? No? Then we are adjourning this meeting and calling to order the Voter Registration Commission meeting for September 26, 2023. I don't see any action items. Is there anybody who would like to make public comment at this meeting? Ms. Guiney?
Hi, thank you so much. I
Good morning.
see that on your agenda, you do have the automatic voter registration meant, as an action item. And I just wanted to, or as a agenda item, excuse me. I just wanted to say that I have seen some folks. Yes.
We know you, but
Oh,
could
I'm
you
sorry.
please
My name is
identify
Sophie
yourselves
from
for the,
Swarthmore. I apologize. Thank you for
all
reminding me
right.
to tell you that. Anyway, I just was going to say that I've seen some folks online saying things that I believe are not factually based, that are skeptical of this process.
That's never happened before.
Exactly. And I presume that you'll be discussing
It's
just in
online.
brief to explain to those folks,
Please.
even though they're not here to verbalize that concern, that this is indeed a legal process that has the same security that it always has had. It's just instead of going into the grocery store and buying your bananas, you're calling someone to have them pick your bananas for you or whatever it is, but that you're still going to get a banana, and we're still going to have eligible voters, or the only people that are going to be registered to vote. So I wanted to ask you to make sure you clarify that in language that's more specific and legalese than going shopping.
No,
All
thank
right.
you. It's
Thank you.
important for people to be aware
Yeah, I
of that.
just think
It'll
it's good
affect,
to
it'll
have that
affect people.
in plain language, somewhere
Hopefully
between that
positively.
and that. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't know, Ms. Winterbottom, if you want to do that or you want Mr. Parks to do that, but let's make sure to, oh, Mr. Allen to do that. Sorry.
For some statistics for what we have since the last primary. So we currently have 404,781 registered voters in Delaware County. We for this time of the year, we just seen a little bit more registration drives, not as much as we've seen last year. And so to date from the primary, we received 1,101 registration drives, paper applications. That's not including registration drives online. There's two organizations, Voter Participation Center, Voter Participation and Center for Voter Information. They do a mailing every year. It's an application to voters that may have moved and maybe didn't change their address, or voter or residents that may want to register or be eligible to register to vote. So between those two organizations, they sent out 20,538 applications just in Delaware County. Those went out just the other week, and as of yesterday, we received 128 of them. So I do believe that we usually see a lot of them start coming back. But our mail has gone up. We've seen a lot of registration drives come and pick up registration forms and take them out. And then so a lot have gone out, but only 1,101 have come back. So they still have time to the last day to register.
Historically, there's been some problems with some forms that have come back insufficient and duplicative. And are you seeing that now?
Yes, the same as we've always seen, maybe non-precinctable addresses or voters that might have put a business address. So they don't change their address, or they're not registered if it goes to HAVA. We send out notices. Those voters would have to get back to us to approve that application fully. And that's all I have for our statistics.
Any questions? And then Mr. Allen, are you covering the A and B?
Yes.
you very
So
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
so the 20, I want to say it was the 23rd. No, it wasn't the 23rd. It was earlier. It was a week ago. It was the 19th of September was National Voter Registration Day. And the governor used that occasion to announce that the state's system for both online registration or online processing of changes to your driver's license or state ID, as well as in-person processing of your driver's license or state ID through a PennDOT facility, was making an important, significant change. And that is, in the past, the eligible individual had to opt in to register to vote. So they were asked the question, do you want this to also update your registration? And notice, I want to emphasize the words eligible individual. So this is someone whose records or who's already indicated when they're online through their date of birth that they will be 18 years of age or older by election day, and that they are a U.S. citizen. So the opt-in option was not provided until or unless both of those conditions were met. So what changed is that now the individual who's using, whether they're in line or being serviced at the counter at a PennDOT facility, or they're online using the update of their driver's license or state ID, they have to physically opt out of using this information to update their registration. And that's an important and positive change. And here's why. First off, we retain the safeguard of voter registration receiving this information in the same format that it always has, indicating that a specific voter has either moved within our county or moved to another county or moved from another county into our county. And we update that registration and we perform a verification mailing to that voter, which the voter then can receive and say, well, wait a minute, if they only meant this as a temporary move because perhaps they were taking care of a sick relative, or it was temporarily for a job assignment, or it was some kind of temporary housing situation. They have the opportunity to contact us and say, hey, no, I was not moving. Keep my registration exactly where it was. So the same safeguard that existed before exists now, and the same safeguard in terms of making sure that the person is at least 18 years of age and a U.S. citizen existed before and exists now. But the important thing is that this will help clean up the voter rolls in many instances where individuals have moved and where they didn't opt in the past. Now they have to choose to opt out. And we're going to receive that information to update our voter rolls, which will lead to more information, getting people to the right polling place, not having people vote in their old jurisdiction where they really don't have a right to be voting. So this is a win for a cleaner election administration and most importantly, cleaner voter rolls that reflect where people actually live. I look forward to talking more about other steps that we can take as a county early next year to try to update the voter rolls. We had a pilot program with Swarthmore College that was very successful. We were able to clean up a lot of outdated registrations because sometimes when the student leaves the campus and goes on with their life and moves to an entirely different state, they never undo that registration. And we want to make sure that we clean these up. This is one way where it's going to happen through PennDOT when people are just going through the routine of updating their driver's license or state ID.
Mr. Allen, I read the news coverage of it, but I didn't read the underlying regs or however they're positioned. But what happens with a choice of party? Will a default be non-party affiliation?
If it's a new registration and the individual,
No, don't even listen. I hope that's not on it. Sorry, please, Mr.
I don't
Allen,
know
this is
what
very
was said,
serious
but
conversation.
in any event, if it's a matter of a new registration and the individual does not make a selection, there'll be no affiliation. If it's a matter of a person who is already registered with a party, whether it's a large party or a small party, their registration will stay with that same political party. So whether it's, Democratic, Republican, Eagles, Gritty, whatever, they're going to stay with that party.
Well, certainly after last night, I'm of the Eagles party. I always have been my whole life, but I'll be curious to see, Ms. Winterbottom, what happens with the sort of non-party affiliations and then attempts to vote in primaries. You may get more questions, I would guess, if this is successful in getting more people registered. Any questions, Mr. McLean?
Has the Department of State actually issued any sort of formal guidance or regulations, for this? I mean, that type of thing would be helpful for, like I said, any misinformation that is there to help people understand. Because you're right, Madam Chair. I mean, I saw the news coverage, but I don't understand how it gets done, or even perhaps, our board sitting as the Voter Registration Commission could go out to a polling or go out to a PennDOT place where you renew your license and see how it works. On the computer there. For me anyway, I think that would be helpful if I got a question from somebody about.
I love it. Is it, when it's implemented, is it already effective? I mean,
It
looked
took
like
effect.
pretty effect, yeah.
It's already in effect. So there's talk about the possibility of litigation to try to reverse it. Even if such litigation were to succeed, I can't imagine that it would undo the registrations and the updates to registrations that would have occurred in the meantime. But essentially, it was a programming change where instead of the person needing to check the box to have this affect their registration or create a registration, they now have to check the box to not have
Right.
it affect or create the registration. So it was a very minute change, but it moved us from the Commonwealth where you had to opt in the past to now a Commonwealth where you have to opt out.
Right. No, I mean, I personally am a fan. So I guess what Mr. McLean may be asking for is a field trip after the election.
Well, as it happens, I can speak to this because I was at the DMV last Thursday to renew my license in the ordinary course. I had done you get the notice that it's expiring and I'd sent it in. And so I got the camera card back and I was going in to take my picture. And when you get your picture taken, you have a series of prompts on the keypad that you're walked through by the officer at the DMV. The very first one of which is, would you like to update your registration? You push 1 for yes on the keypad, I think, and 2 for no, or whatever it is. And so that's the way it's presented, or at least was presented to me.
Because you were already registered. So the question would be if different prompts for
I
somebody.
can't speak to what the exchange would be if you weren't registered at all. For me, I was already registered. And so it was, would you like to update it with address information or anything like that? And I didn't need to do that. So no. And then there were a few other prompts after that, but that was my experience.
Well, if you do want a field trip at the end of I think we should wait till after the election, perhaps. I don't know. But, Mr. Ellens, I don't know if your eyes are telling any information or not, but the question of how it works, I don't know if they're going to push out though something also just to demonstrate how.
That was the entirety of the explanation I received because I put in a few inquiries over the last week, was that it simply was a programming change where instead of being asked, do you want this to, you're now required to check this box if you don't want this to affect or create a
I
registration.
mean, the reason, the thing that stood out as not explained was what I asked you, which is then you're gonna have a lot more unaffiliated registrations than potentially than historically, right? You're not looking, Miss Winterbaum, you're saying that, no?
I don't think it's still as unless people work. I could be wrong, so I mean, but if we got.
Oh, so you think people are actively prompted to do it?
I think so.
Okay.
I think the one line, and I think it will like come up with a red, star saying, hey, you missed this section. So it might, I mean, they can leave it blank, you've got applications blank, and it would be blank, or, I don't know, would be one, or, whatever they choose, or other, or, So I think it might make you pick one or pick other, maybe pick something. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
I think for everything I've read, though, I mean, I think one of the, it doesn't sound like administratively it adds anything on our side. I mean, it sounds like this is entirely something that is a change on a DMV form. We'll continue to get the output of that form. It'll just, as you say, we might potentially get a few more. And I think it's great. I think automatic voter registration is not a scary thing. It happens in a lot of countries. It's, I've never really understood or had it adequately explained to me in a way that made sense of why it wasn't the norm already, ever since I was old enough to learn about elections. So I applaud this move by the governor.
I agree. And I
voter participation,
Right.
not just registration.
we have in our household a young college student who's Brazilian, and he can't, I mean, in Brazil, if you don't vote, they track you down and they fine you, and you're in trouble with the law for not voting. So it's a very different system.
I mean, that's too far the other way.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing about it too is, it's also, it's this uniquely American thing where we register our party with the government. That's another thing that folks in other countries are kind of scratching their head about, like, why would you tell the government what party you're in? But we have our system.
That's not
have
every
theirs.
state.
What's that?
So going from state to state, you do or don't register
Right.
with any party. So there are different systems for primary voting. There's the closed system that we have here where you have to be registered with a party in order to participate in that party's primary. There are open systems where you can pick and choose which party's ballot you want to vote at that election, obviously, and you can't vote more than one. So you can switch or stay the same from election to election. Then there's another version which allows you to get a ballot with the candidates in the primary from both parties, and you still, for whatever office it is, are only able to make one. And then there's a fourth variety, the jungle primary, as they call it, where you advance the top two, and they can be the top two from two parties, or they can be the top two from the same party. And it just depends on the will of the legislature.
Well, I do think it's a good thing. I think we need to get people registered, but then I think we need to get them out to vote. And I think studies show that if somebody votes in their first election when they're 18, they will continue to vote. They're more likely to be, to continue to vote regularly than if they start skipping elections and thinking that their vote doesn't matter. Everybody's vote does matter. So thank you very much, Mr. Allen. Did you have any other, the mailings by private organizations? Was that an action item?
Just to follow up on,
Fine.
Crystal's remarks, we, as election administrators, generally speaking, we cringe every time we are alerted to the voter participation center mailings, because while some of them lead to valid registrations, some of them go to households with outdated mailings, mailing addresses, and they invariably trigger a certain number of calls from the voters or occupants of that property who say very clearly and very forcefully that no such person lives at that address anymore. They've done a better job on two fronts, and that is trying to do a better job of preparing their mailing list. So we hope it's going to lead to fewer complaint phone calls that we receive. And secondly, they're doing a better job of advising counties. As you noticed, Ms. Winterbottom was able to say exactly how many were mailed out in our county. So they're working a little more closely with the Secretary of State or the Department of State or the Secretary of the Commonwealth, whatever it may be in any given state, to try to give a heads up as far as what they're doing.
Any questions, Ms. Blaine?
Just to follow up on the automatic voter registration, Mr. Allen, you said that you had put an increase, but I don't know, my question got answered in terms of the Department of State has not issued regulations or directions to registration commissions about how exactly this will work. I mean,
we still receive the files in the same way, that the online registrations in the same way that we did before. Keep in mind, one of the concerns or observations, however you want to put it, among election administrators is that the motor voter system in Pennsylvania is a PennDOT system that generates data that then we receive at the local level. So it's not something that the Department of State controls or manages or anything other than providing us with guidance as far as how to process the registrations that do come through that system. So the registrations come through the statewide Uniform Registry of Electors, or the SURE system, and we process them the same way. There's no indication of how they came in, whether they came in through the online voter registration system or whatever, but the DMV ones, nothing really changed. So we don't have a flag that this is a person who used the system without opting out, or they opted in, or anything like that. So the programming switch occurred in the PennDOT system, where you no longer, you just had to check a box for a different reason. So before you had to check a box to make it affect or create a registration, and now you have to check a box to make it not affect or create a registration. So we don't see any process changes or instructions at all.
You may just see more registrations.
Yes.
So, Madam Chair, I'm not necessarily against automatic voter registration. The governor's not asking us whether we're for it or against it.
No, he's not.
Doing it. It's not asking the legislature. So it may, if it cleans up the voter rolls and provides more access, that's great. But my concern is here we are, the Voter Registration Commission. We had a member of the public say, hey, can you please explain to the people, how this works? And we can't. Our, director of voter registration, she can't, and a very experienced election law lawyer, he can't either. I mean, so that's my only concern. So I would just perhaps want to collect more information, and ask the state if they have guidance, that we can explain to the public. And like I said, I'm always in favor of field trips. Maybe we're going to have a special meeting to deal with polling place changes. Maybe we can kind of piggyback on and make an appointment, or somebody probably knows somebody at one of these voter motor Department of Motor Vehicle places that we can stop by and they can kind of run us through with somebody, so we have an idea and we can explain to folks, do exactly what that member of the public asks us to do, is say to the public with confidence that, yeah, I understand how it works, and don't worry, as I joked, it's not going to, automatically register you one party or not. I mean,
It was a terrible joke.
it was a good joke.
No, it's too.
It was okay.
It was okay. All right. Well, look, more information so that we can help our public understand what's happening. I think, Ms. County, that's what you asked for too, is more information. I think we should just, if we could gather that, and be able to share that, and Mr. Allen, we could discuss offline how we might get that information and whether a field trip is in order. But what I don't want to do is put more pressure on our team to arrange a field trip during the, election crunch. So let's figure out how we can do that most effectively as possible so that we can share the information more with our voters. All right. Anything, Mr. Alberts?
I have nothing.
Mr. Parks? No? Mr. Allen? All right. Well, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you so much.
We're gonna chaperone stuff.
Nobody at the DMV likes me.
Back our lunch.